In St. John Bosco's vision of the mysterious vine, the two main sins that lead most people to hell were revealed to him. He recounted his dream to the oratory boys, saying, "Finally, a hailstorm hit the vine. I tried to flee, but my guide held me back, saying, 'Look at the hail.' I looked and saw hailstones big as eggs. They were black or red, each pointed at one end and flat at the other, like a mallet. Those nearest to me were black, but I could see the red ones beyond. 'How strange,' I exclaimed. 'I've never seen hailstones like these.' 'Get closer, and you'll see something else,' said the stranger. As I got closer to the black hailstones, an awful stench made me draw back immediately. At the man's insistence, I picked one up to examine it, but dropped it instantly, unable to stomach the smell. 'I can't see anything,' I said. 'Try again,' he replied. Overcoming my disgust, I took up a black hailstone and read on it, 'Immodesty.' I then walked over to the red hailstones. They were ice cold, but started fires wherever they fell. I picked one up. It still smelled awful, but I found it slightly easier to read. Pride. Somewhat embarrassed, I asked, 'Are these the two main vices threatening this house?' 'These are the two principal vices that ruin most souls, not only in your house, but all over the world. In due time, you'll see how many will plunge into hell because of them.' Now, I don't think men today understand how terrible the sin of impurity is. In this highly effeminate world, they might look upon impure behavior as understandable for a healthy man. Tonight, I'd like to show you the horror we should have for that sin by repeating an excerpt from a sermon by a doctor of the church. The Catholic Men's Podcast, helping you find good works of literature for the Catholic gentleman. St. Alphonsus Liguori on the 4 gates of hell, the 4th being impurity. He also gives us the solution for staying pure, and I intend to tell you a very inspiring story at the end that may encourage you. At the end of his sermon, he said, "We have now, lastly, to speak of the 4th gate of hell, which is impurity, and it is by this gate that the greater number of the damned enter. Some will say that it's a trifling sin. Is it a trifling sin? It's a mortal sin. St. Antoninus writes that such is the nauseousness of this sin that the devils themselves cannot endure it. Moreover, the doctors of the church say that certain demons who have been superior to the rest, remembering their ancient dignity, disdain tempting to so loathsome a sin. Consider then how disgusting he must be to God, who, like a dog, is ever returning to his vomit, or wallowing like a pig in the stinking mire of this accursed vice. The dog is returned to his vomit, and the sow that was washed to her rolling in the mire. The impure say, moreover, God has compassion on us who are subject to this vice, because he knows that we're flesh. What do you say? God has compassion on this vice. But you must know that the most horrible chastisements with which God has ever visited the earth have been drawn down by this vice. St. Jerome says that this is the only sin of which we read that it caused God to repent of having made man. It repented him that had made man, for all flesh had corrupted its way. Wherefore it is, St. Jerome says, that there is no sin which God punishes so rigorously, even upon earth, as this. He once sent fire from heaven upon 5 cities, and consumed all their inhabitants for this sin. Principally on account of this sin did God destroy mankind, with the exception of 8 persons, by the deluge. It is a sin which God punishes not only in the other life, but in this also. In confirmation of this, you have only to enter the hospitals and see there the many poor young men who were once strong and robust, but are now weak, squalid, full of pains, tormented with lancets and ulcers, all through this accursed vice. Because thou hast forgotten me, and cast me off behind thy back, bear thou also thy wickedness and thy fornications. Because, says God, you have forgotten me, and turned your back upon me for a miserable pleasure of the flesh, I am resolved that even in this life you shall pay the forfeit of your wickedness. You say, God has compassion upon men subject to this sin, but it is this sin that sends most men to hell. St. Remigius says that the greater number of the damned are in hell through this vice. Father Signeri writes that as this vice fills the world with sinners, so it fills hell with damned souls. And before him, St. Bernardine of Siena wrote, "This sin draws the whole world, as it were, into sin." And before him, St. Bernard and St. Isidore said that the human race is brought under the power of the devil more by lust than by all the other vices. The reason is because this vice proceeds from the natural inclination of the flesh. Hence, the angelic doctor says that the devil doesn't take such complacency in securing the commission of any other sin as of this, because the person who is plunged in this infernal mire remains fast therein, and almost wholly unable to free himself more. No one is so obstinate in sin as the impure, says St. Thomas of Villanova. Moreover, this vice deprives one of all light, for the impure man becomes so blind as almost wholly to forget God, says St. Lawrence Justinian, which is in accordance with what is said by the prophet Osee. They will not set their thoughts to return to their God, for the spirit of fornication is in the midst of them, and they have not known God. The impure man knows not God. He obeys neither God nor reason, as St. Jerome says. He obeys only the sensual appetite, which causes him to act the beast. This sin, because it flatters, makes us fall at once into the habit of it, a habit which some carry with them even to death. You see husbands and decrepit old men indulge in the same thoughts and committing the same sins that they committed in their youth, and because sins of this kind are so easily committed, they become multiplied without number. Ask of the sinner how many impure thoughts he has consented to. He'll tell you he can't remember. But, brother, if you can't remember the number, God can, and you know that a single immodest thought is enough to send you to hell. How many immodest words have you spoken in which you took delight, and by which you scandalized your neighbor? From thoughts and words you proceed to acts, and to those innumerable impurities which those wretches roll and wallow in like swine, without ever being satisfied, for this vice never satisfies. But, Father, you'll say, how can I hold out against the innumerable temptations which assail me? I'm weak, I'm flesh, and since you're weak, why not recommend yourself to God and to Most Holy Mary, who is the Mother of Purity? Since you're flesh, why do you throw yourself in the way of sin? Why do you not mortify your eyes? Why do you gaze upon those objects whence temptations flow? It is to be remarked, moreover, that this sin brings with it innumerable others, enmities, thefts, and more especially sacrilegious confessions and communions, by reason of the shame which will not allow these impurities to be disclosed in confession. And let us remark here in passing that it is sacrilege above all things that brings upon us sickness and death. For, says the Apostle, he that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh judgment to himself, not discerning the body of the Lord. And then he adds, therefore are many infirm and weak among you. And St. John Chrysostom, in explanation of that passage, says that St. Paul speaks of persons who were chastised with bodily infirmities, because they received the sacrament with a guilty conscience. My brethren, should you ever have been sunk in this vice, I do not bid you to be disheartened, but arise at once from this foul and infernal pit. Beg of God forthwith to give you light, and stretch out his hand to you. The first thing that you have to do is break with the near occasion of sin. Without that, preaching and tears and resolutions and confessions are all lost. Remove the occasions, and then constantly recommend yourself to God and to Mary, the Mother of Purity. No matter how grievously you may be tempted, do not be discouraged by the temptation. At once call to your aid Jesus and Mary, pronouncing their sacred names. These blessed names have the virtue of making the devil fly and stifling that hellish flame within you. If the devil persists in tempting you, persevere in calling upon Jesus and Mary, and certainly you shall not fall. In order to rid yourself of your evil habits, undertake some special devotion to Our Lady. Begin to fast in her honor upon Saturdays. Contrive to visit her image every day, and beg of her to obtain your deliverance from that vice. Every morning, immediately after rising, never omit saying 3 Hail Marys in honor of her purity, and do the same when going to bed. And above all things, as I have said, when the temptation is most troublesome, call quickly upon Jesus and Mary. Beware, brother, if you do not be converted now, you may never be converted." Thus he ended his sermon, and I'd like to tell you a story which should inspire you with confidence in Our Lady, also from the works of St. Alphonsus Liguori. In Chapter 8 of the Glories of Mary, he wrote, "Father Eusebius Nirenberg relates that there lived in the city of Aragona a girl named Alexandra, who being noble and very beautiful, was greatly loved by 2 young men. Through jealousy, they one day fought and killed each other. Their enraged relatives, in return, killed the poor young girl as the cause of so much trouble, cut off her head, and threw her into a well. A few days after, St. Dominic was passing through that place, and, inspired by the Lord, approached the well and said, 'Alexandra, come forth.' And immediately the head of the deceased came forth, placed itself on the edge of the well, and prayed St. Dominic to hear its confession. The saint heard its confession, and also gave it communion, in presence of a great concourse of persons who had assembled to witness the miracle. Then St. Dominic ordered her to speak, and tell why she had received that grace. Alexandra answered that when she was beheaded, she was in a state of mortal sin, but that the Most Holy Mary, on account of the rosary, which she was in the habit of reciting, had preserved her in life. 2 days the head retained its life upon the edge of the well, in the presence of all, and then the soul went to purgatory. But 15 days after, the soul of Alexandra appeared to St. Dominic, beautiful and radiant as a star, and told him that one of the principal sources of relief to the souls in purgatory is the rosary, which is recited for them, and that, as soon as they arrive in paradise, they pray for those who apply to them these powerful prayers. Having said this, St. Dominic saw that happy soul ascending in triumph to the kingdom of the blessed. So that's why I've been emphasizing Mary so much on this channel. Impurity is the #1 sin for so many men today, and St. Alphonsus Liguori told us to confide in Mary. Take his advice. She will intercede for you and eventually make you pure and clean of heart. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you.